The harbour of Seville buzzed with anticipation on the morning of August 10, 1519, as 5 ships prepared for what many considered a fool's errand. Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese navigator in service to the Spanish crown, stood on the deck of his flagship Trinidad, surveying the fleet that would attempt something no human had ever accomplished, sailing westward to reach the Spice Islands of the East Indies, thereby proving that the Earth could be circumnavigated. Magellan was 40 years old, a seasoned explorer whose weathered face bore scars from battles in Morocco and whose mind harbored secrets learned during 8 years of service in Portuguese India. His proposal to King Charles I of Spain was audacious beyond measure. He would find a western passage to the lucrative spice trade, breaking Portugal's monopoly on the eastern route around Africa. What made this venture even more remarkable was that Magellan was essentially defecting from his homeland to serve Spain, Portugal's greatest rival. The fleet consisted of 5 vessels: Trinidad, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, and Santiago. These ships carried 237 men from across Europe: Spaniards, Portuguese, Italians, Greeks, Germans, and others representing one of the most international crews ever assembled. Among them was Antonio Pigafetta, a young Italian scholar whose detailed journal would provide the only complete account of the extraordinary journey ahead. The political backdrop of this expedition revealed the intense competition between European powers for control of global trade. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 had divided the world between Spain and Portugal, but the exact location of the Spice Islands remained disputed. Magellan convinced the Spanish court that these islands lay within Spain's sphere of influence if approached from the west, making this voyage not just an adventure, but a crucial geopolitical mission. As the ships departed Seville and sailed down the Guadalquivir River toward the Atlantic, few crew members understood the true magnitude of their undertaking. Magellan himself possessed only theoretical knowledge of the route ahead. He believed, based on incomplete maps and wishful thinking, that a narrow strait somewhere along the South American coast would lead quickly to the Pacific, which he assumed was a relatively small ocean. The voyage's first major challenge came not from nature, but from human treachery. Spanish captains, resentful of serving under a Portuguese commander, began plotting mutiny before the ships even reached South America. Captain Juan de Cartagena of the San Antonio questioned Magellan's authority openly, while others whispered that their leader was secretly planning to deliver the fleet to Portugal. Magellan's response demonstrated the iron will that would carry the expedition through unimaginable hardships. At the Canary Islands, he had Cartagena arrested and replaced. When the fleet reached Brazil in November 1519, he reorganized command structures to ensure loyalty. His decisive leadership established the authority that would prove essential during the trials ahead. The South American coast proved far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Month after month, the ships sailed southward, searching for the western passage that Magellan insisted must exist. They explored every river, mouth, and bay, hoping each inlet might lead to the Pacific. The crew's initial enthusiasm gradually transformed into skepticism, then fear, as the coastline stretched endlessly toward the unknown southern extremes of the world. Winter approached as the fleet reached the desolate shores of Patagonia. Magellan decided to establish winter quarters at Puerto San Julian, a decision that nearly destroyed the expedition. The barren landscape offered little food, temperatures plummeted, and the crew faced the prospect of spending months in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. On Easter Sunday 1520, simmering tensions erupted into open rebellion. Captains Gaspar de Quesada, Luis de Mendoza, and Juan Sebastián Elcano seized control of 3 ships, demanding an immediate return to Spain. They confronted Magellan with an ultimatum: abandon the search for a western passage or face mutiny. Magellan's response revealed tactical brilliance that matched his navigational skills. Rather than negotiate, he used loyal crew members to retake the Victoria through deception, then positioned his ships to control the harbor entrance. The mutiny collapsed within days, but Magellan's punishment was swift and harsh. Quesada was executed and quartered, his body displayed as a warning. Mendoza was killed during the fighting. 40 other mutineers were condemned to death, though Magellan ultimately pardoned most, recognizing that he needed every man for the journey ahead. The expedition's troubles multiplied during the Antarctic winter. Scurvy began affecting the crew, their food supplies dwindled, and storms damaged the ships. When spring arrived, Magellan sent the Santiago to scout southward for the passage. The ship was wrecked in a storm, though its crew survived and rejoined the fleet after an arduous overland trek. As the southern summer of 1520 began, the remaining 4 ships resumed their search. On October 21, they discovered what appeared to be another large bay. Magellan sent the San Antonio and Concepcion to investigate while he remained with the Trinidad and Victoria. Days passed without word from the scouting ships, and Magellan began to fear they had been lost. Then, on October 28, the Concepcion appeared on the horizon, flying banners and firing cannons in celebration. Captain João Serrão brought extraordinary news. They had found the passage. Beyond the treacherous, winding waterway lay another ocean, its waters stretching to the western horizon. The passage that would later bear Magellan's name was narrow, dangerous, and flanked by towering mountains, but it was navigable. The journey through the strait tested every skill the navigators possessed. Tidal currents, hidden rocks, and sudden storms threatened to dash the ships against the cliffs. The passage twisted and branched, creating a maze where a wrong turn could lead to disaster. Snow-covered peaks towered above them, and at night, fires visible on the southern shore earned that land the name Tierra del Fuego, Land of Fire. Halfway through the strait, the crew of the San Antonio, led by Esteban Gomes, abandoned the expedition and sailed back to Spain, taking with them a significant portion of the fleet's food supplies. This desertion left Magellan with only 3 ships and about 150 men to complete a journey that was already stretching far beyond its planned duration. On November 28, 1520, the remaining ships emerged from the strait into waters so calm that Magellan named them Mar Pacifico, the Pacific Ocean. The crew celebrated their achievement, believing the worst was behind them. They had found the Western Passage and proven that South America was indeed a separate continent. What they didn't realize was that their greatest ordeal lay ahead. Magellan's maps suggested that the Spice Islands lay just a few days' sail across the Pacific. In reality, they faced the largest ocean on Earth, a vast expanse of water that would test human endurance to its absolute limits. For 99 days, the 3 ships sailed northwest across empty ocean, seeing no land except 2 small, uninhabited atolls that offered no relief. The crew gradually consumed their remaining food supplies and then began eating anything remotely edible. Pigafetta recorded their desperate measures. "We ate biscuit," which was no longer biscuit, but powder of biscuits swarming with worms, for they had eaten the good. It stank strongly of the urine of rats. We drank yellow water that had been putrid for many days. We also ate some ox hides that covered the top of the mainyard to prevent the yard from chafing the shrouds, and which had become exceedingly hard because of the sun, rain, and wind. Scurvy ravaged the crew with devastating efficiency. Men's gums swelled until their teeth fell out. Their joints ached constantly, and old wounds reopened. 19 men died during the Pacific crossing, their bodies committed to the endless blue waters. Those who survived grew so weak they could barely manage the ship's essential functions. On March 6, 1521, after more than 3 months at sea, the lookouts spotted land. The islands they reached later, named Guam, were inhabited by Chamorro people who possessed swift sailing craft and showed great interest in European goods. Initial contact was friendly, but cultural misunderstandings led to conflict when islanders took items from the ships according to their customs of reciprocal exchange, which the Europeans interpreted as theft. After obtaining fresh food and water, the expedition continued westward and reached the Philippines on March 16, 1521. Magellan had achieved his primary objective, reaching Asian waters by sailing west. More importantly, he had demonstrated that the Earth's circumference was far greater than anyone had calculated, fundamentally changing human understanding of the planet's size. The Philippines proved to be Magellan's final destination. He became involved in local politics, converting some rulers to Christianity and allying himself with Raja Humabon of Cebu. When a neighboring chief named Lapu-Lapu refused to submit to Spanish authority, Magellan decided to demonstrate European military superiority through direct action. On April 27, 1521, Magellan led 49 men in an attack on Lapu-Lapu's forces at Mactan Island. The Spanish captain expected their armor and firearms to ensure easy victory against warriors armed with bamboo spears and wooden shields. Instead, the Europeans found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered on unfamiliar terrain. Native tactics neutralized Spanish technological advantages, and Magellan himself was killed during the fighting, struck down while covering his men's retreat. Command of the expedition fell to João Serrão and Duarte Barbosa, but their leadership proved short-lived. Raja Humabon, suspicious of Spanish intentions, invited the remaining officers to a feast and had them murdered. The surviving crew members, now numbering fewer than 100, faced the prospect of completing their journey without experienced leaders. Juan Sebastián Elcano, the former mutineer whom Magellan had pardoned, emerged as the expedition's new leader. Recognizing that 3 ships were too many for their depleted crew, he ordered the Concepcion burned and its useful materials transferred to the remaining vessels. The Trinidad and Victoria sailed for the Spice Islands, finally reaching their original destination in November 1521. At Tidor, the expedition achieved its commercial objective, loading both ships with valuable cloves, nutmeg, and other spices. However, the Trinidad proved unseaworthy and remained behind for repairs while the Victoria, under Elcano's command, departed alone to complete the circumnavigation. The Victoria's return journey across the Indian Ocean and around Africa tested the remaining 47 crew members beyond their limits. To avoid Portuguese patrols, Elcano followed a southern route that added weeks to their voyage. Storms, starvation, and disease continued claiming lives. When they finally reached the Portuguese Cape Verde Islands in July 1522, only 22 men remained alive, and they were so weakened by malnutrition that they could barely manage their ship. On September 6, 1522, more than 3 years after their departure, the Victoria limped into Seville Harbour. Of the original 237 men who had begun the voyage, only 18 Europeans and 1 Malayan slave survived to complete the first circumnavigation of the Earth. Their cargo of spices more than paid for the entire expedition, but the true achievement transcended any commercial consideration. Elcano and his survivors had proven that the Earth was indeed round and navigable, demonstrated the true size of the Pacific Ocean, and established that Asia could be reached by sailing either east or west. Their voyage fundamentally changed human understanding of geography and opened new possibilities for global trade and exploration. Though Magellan did not live to complete the journey he initiated, his vision and determination had made possible one of history's greatest achievements in navigation and human endurance. That was the end of the story of Ferdinand Magellan, the visionary navigator whose daring plan opened the oceans and proved the true scale of our planet. If you found this story fascinating, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss more hidden history stories.